GAB is the largest artesian groundwater system in the world. It lies under 22% of Australia. It covers 60% of Queensland and extends into the Northern Territory, South Australia and New South Wales. It contains 65,000 million megalitres of water and provides secure water supplies to pastoral industry in 84 regional towns. So it is a very, very significant resource which we really need to care and look after. If we look at the actual current take of water from the Great Artesian Basin, it's 313,400 megalitres per year. And if we look at the actual use of that, we're talking about petroleum and gas taking 64,000 megs, stock and domestic 66,000 megs, other uses, that includes power stations, intensive livestock and also town water supply, 93,000 megs, and the losses from uncapped bores and bore drains still amount to 90,400 megs a year. So that's the current water use as of earlier this year. If we look in our local area here, the Springbok, the Balloon and Hutton Sandstone aquifers in the Surat Basin have been declining pressures from CSG activities. The department has finally admitted that. The OGIA report didn't. The 2016 report did not admit that. And what they're saying in the new GAB plan is there'll be no new water for agriculture from those aquifers. So that's the direct impact of CSG. The GAB is in a state of decline, even though we've had GABC program running for a number of years, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But we need to take decisive action. The technical assessments for the Great Artesian Basin Strategic Management Plan have determined that the GAB is still in a state of decline. The take of water by landholders, councils and industrial users is managed by DNR&M. And we found out earlier this year that the take of water for petroleum and gas operations and mining is managed by DEHP. So we have two agencies responsible for the management of GAB. Sure recipe for disaster, because they don't talk to each other. Since 2006, the GAB has been managed through the Water Resource Plan and the Great Artesian Basin Resource Operations Plan. That was a 10-year plan which was due to expire in 2016, September 2016. The government actually applied for an extension of 12 months, and the new plan is supposed to be in place by September this year. The old existing plans provided for security of supply to existing and future water users. They also provided for protection of groundwater flows to springs and watercourses, and they provided for the management of the GAB through management areas, management units and aquifers. And in total there were 25 management units, 95 management areas and 233 aquifers managed under the GAB plan. The plan provided 19,800 megalitres of general reserve and 22,400 metres of state reserve of unallocated water. That was for future development. And what we found is that 2,283 megalitres of state reserve and 2,565 megalitres of general reserve has been sold during the life of the plan. So there's still a hell of a lot of water available in those reserves for purchase if the government was intending to sell it. They also provided for relocatable water licences within a management area or a management unit. That was the sort of form of water trade which was introduced in that plan. If we look now, the draft Gabora plan, which was released earlier this year, and 17th of April, the date of submissions closed. It focuses on aquifer management. It has 16 groundwater units and 91 geological formations. So it's got a much broader spatial area in terms of management of the basin. The focus on aquifers I like. I think that's a very good approach, but there are some other issues about this plan which I'll talk about. It now includes the Winton-Mukunda aquifer, the Normanton Formation up in the Gulf, and also the Betts Creek beds in the Galilee Basin, which are fairly significant in terms of the Adani mine and others over there. It places limits on the amount of water taken. There's exemptions for water permits, stock and domestic use, non-associated petroleum and gas water use, unallocated water sales, and a grant of water licences for water saved under the GABC program. Associated petroleum and gas water use is still a statutory right with unlimited take in the draft plan. So petroleum and gas still have favoured nation treatment under the proposed plan. It also provides for protection of groundwater dependent ecosystems, existing entitlements through separation distances, although separation distances, as I said to some people yesterday on the bus trip, do not apply to existing bores or new gas wells. So separation is only applying to new bores. It provides for water for future needs. There is increased flexibility for water licence relocations, but there are also some restrictions. It grants or proposes to grant an entitlement for saved water out of the GABSI program for landholders that actually apply the capping themselves and pay for it all themselves. If you've got funding from either state or Commonwealth Government, which is unlikely to happen because GABSI funding finishes at the end of June this year, you don't get that entitlement for saved water. It provides reserves for state, general and Indigenous reserves. If we look at it, there's 28,600 megalitres for state reserve, 5,615 megalitres for general reserve, and 830 megalitres for Indigenous reserve. That is a major reduction in water for agriculture. If you think of the old plan, 19,800 megalitres for agriculture, this plan, 5,615. Huge reduction in water for agriculture. The reduced supplies for agriculture in the Surat Basin, you may be interested to know, provides for 840 megalitres of water between Roma and Toowoomba versus 7,200 in the old existing GAB plan. Huge reduction. Once the 840 megalitres is gone, that's it. It provides for the conversion of 147 area-based water licences, irrigating 5,740 hectares of land to a volumetric entitlement. They're still to determine the conversion factor. It provides water for make-good water licences. Or process for make-good water licences. It allows existing licences to be amended to access water from different aquifer for make-good. Groundwater-dependent ecosystems and separation distances will be considered, but there's no need to comply with those for relocation rules under the Gabora Water Management Protocol. It also places controls on the inefficient use of GAB water. There's still 185 free-flowing bores and 432 bore drains, which is attributing 29% of the state's water use out of the GAB. They need to be capped. Proposed to implement watertight delivery systems by 1 September 2027. So it's a 10-year frame for those bores to be capped. There are also some significant get-out-of-jail provisions and a bit of huffing and puffing about people who don't comply with that timeline. The water monitoring will focus, in the new plan, will focus on groundwater pressure, water levels, water use, water demand, groundwater-dependent ecosystems, and a review of the groundwater network every 5 years. There is nothing in the plan about monitoring water quality, which is a major concern. Water metering, there are no changes proposed. No metering of stock and domestic bores or bores of under 2 megalitres per annum volumetric limit. The GAB Water Management Protocol proposes the application of 3 zones in the Surat Basin: Springbok Balloon Zone, the Hutton Zone and the Precipice Zone. These zones may limit the granting of unallocated water and dealings with water licences to take water, including relocation of licences. So they're talking about, in those 3 zones, which are in the Surat Basin, some pretty severe limitations on accessing new water or trading or relocation of existing water licences. If we move on to the risks to the GAB, the risks, as I see it, is unsustainable take of water, continuation of the statutory petroleum and gas and miners' groundwater rights, potential contamination from CSG fracking fluids, Wandoan C and CS program, and the chinchilla salt storage. Non-completion of the GABSI program, and the apathy of all of us, including water users and the general public, to the GAB. If we talk about unsustainable take, the unlimited take of associated water by CSG and mining tenures, that has got to stop. We're looking at over 100,000 megalitres per annum taken out of the system by those tenures. Failure to cap flowing bores. And as I said, there's still 185 bores to cap. Failure to effectively measure the take of all GAB water. It was only 6th of December last year that legislation was introduced where the take of water by miners out of the GAB and other aquifers had to be measured and reported to government. Before that, free flow. Potential impacts of climate change, and I'm not going to get into a debate here, but we need to just keep that in the back of our mind. If we look at the statutory rights of petroleum and gas and miners, the statutory water rights under petroleum and gas still allows for unlimited volumes of associated water from underground aquifers once they get a tenure. In mining operations, operators that applied for a mining authority before 6th of December last year are required to get an associated water licence. Ones after there automatically have unlimited volumes of associated water take once they grant their tenure. We'll move on then to potential contamination, and because of time restraints, I'm not going to talk about fracking fluids today. There is a fair bit of detail about fracking fluids and the lack of information availability for those. If we move on to the Wandoan CNCS project, Carbon Capture and Storage, the Carbon Transport and Storage Corp, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Glencore, has been formed for that project. It aims to demonstrate the technical viability and safe operation of carbon capture and storage in the Surat Basin. They propose to capture CO2 from large emission sources, compress it into liquid form, transport it to the Wandoan site and store it deep underground in the precipice sandstone formation, where it cannot escape into the atmosphere. And that precipice sandstone is one of the main water sources for stock and domestic water in this area. CO2 sequestration has been used widely overseas in oil and gas production to enhance oil and gas recovery. So they use it as a fracking process overseas. It's been used in Norway, Canada, US, Russia and Mexico. CTCSO outlined the geology of the Surat Basin's potential to store 2.9 billion tonnes of CO2. In August last year, Senator Canavan announced that CTS company was granted $8.75 million by the federal government for a carbon capture and storage project in the Surat Basin. These funds allow the company to deliver the feasibility study and front-end engineering design of the project. The project's got the capacity or potential to contaminate groundwater aquifers and also increase the acidity of groundwater as well. Geosciences Australia is researching suitable sites in Australia, and they said there's potential CO2 sites to be expanded into the Cooper, Eromanga, Bowen and Galilee basins in Queensland. Fairly concerning. This week, Senator Frydenberg also announced that there will be funding available for the Clean Energy Corporation to actually fund projects into the carbon capture and storage. Previously, they were not allowed to fund those projects, but the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, they're going to amend the legislation to allow that to happen. That's fairly concerning.